On today's video, we are going to talk about getting your shoulders strong. We're actually going to talk about our three favorite exercises. Hold on. Hold on. What are you doing?
Just working on my shoulder strength.
What are you?
Oh, this? That's PlayStation 5.
Why are you pressing up?
Oh, no.
What did Siri find?
Siri found a PlayStation 5 that is being given away for free. That's right. Free.
Free 99.
Free 99. 5-finger discount. All you got to do is take those 5 fingers, put them like this, and like and subscribe on our YouTube channel.
You're telling them to steal the subscribe button.
Whatever it takes.
Please,
Really well, actually.
please don't steal a PS5 or anything else. We're not condoning stealing, but we are giving away that PS5 that Corey was just strict pressing.
I gotta even myself out.
All right. So as he is finishing that, we are going to talk about 3 of our favorites and arguably best ways to get overhead strength. And the reason we're saying overhead, not just shoulder strength, because it's about the movement pattern first, and then everything that surrounds the movement pattern. Let's talk about it.
All right, when we talk about overhead strength, first we have to talk about the movement pattern. So when we're programming here at Recharge, we start with movement patterns, not muscle groups. Because if you nail down the movement pattern, then you can fill in the gaps of the muscles, the joints, and what you're trying to actually get stronger within that movement pattern. So overhead is the movement pattern. It's actually a subset of the push movement. So we're going to talk about 3 of our favorite exercises and categories of overhead that we like to get our members, and if you're looking to get stronger overhead, for you as well, that we think you'll benefit from. So let's talk about the first one. All right, the first one we are going to talk about is one you probably don't think too much about. So when you're walking, when your feet hit the ground or when your feet are on the ground, that's called closed chain, meaning you connect with the ground and the force of feet to the ground creates a closing of that forced chain. But when you're doing overhead or working overhead, you're not really closing that chain for your shoulder joint or what's called the shoulder complex. So you have a joint, which is the glenohumeral joint, but you also have a shoulder complex, which is the joint, the shoulder blade, and the muscles around it that move it. So to further develop that complex, you have to flip yourself around in a way by making your hands the new way you ambulate or move around. So when you put your hands down on the ground, you create an upper body closed chain. And most people don't train this way. Certainly you see gymnasts and you see different types of athletes when they're doing hand climbs or hand walks, handstands, things like that. That's a form of upper body closed chain training. But if you're at home or if you never trained that way, that's pretty scary and daunting to do that. So we're going to show you a few ways to do closed chain overhead strengthening that 1 isn't dangerous and 2 is a great way to build up your overhead closed chain capacity. Let's look at a couple of our favorites. So let's start from a lower capacity, or if you're just building up, or if you're dealing with some shoulder aches and pains. Let's start with a pike position. Sometimes it's just getting in that position and letting your shoulders feel that closed chain positioning, because it's a different strain and challenge. And I say strain not in a bad way. You want to strain your tissues. Working out, progressively loading, that's a strain. So it's about a progressive controlled strain. So you're going to get in the pike position, you're going to hold that. See what it feels like. Bring your chest in towards you. Get your feet up on a bench, a bed, a box. It doesn't matter. Something to get your feet up, to get you elevated and inverted, because we want the shoulders to feel that positioning. Now, if you can't be fully inverted, that's okay. You can start in more of a plank position and then gradually work your way into more of an inverted position. See what that feels like. See how your shoulders maintain that. See how your shoulder complex feels. If you're shaking a lot, if you feel like you're going to give out, work in smaller chunks, 30 to 60 seconds, or build up to that 60 seconds. and see how you feel over a few days. Then you can progress that into pike or inverted scapular push-ups or movements. What you're doing there is you're simply trying to push the ground away and you're pushing your shoulders away, just focusing on the shoulder blades. You're going to have not a huge range of motion. You're going to move a little bit here and there, but now we're really engaging that shoulder complex and your scapular muscles. So you'll do those. You could do those for reps. You could do those for times. Typically 8 to 12 repetitions is a good place to start. 3 to 4 sets. Break it into 60 to 90 second rest periods in between. Let your shoulders recover a little bit and see how that feels. From there, once you build up that capacity, you can move into more of pike push-ups, where instead of just using your shoulder blades, you're bending your elbows and you're bringing your head down to the ground and building up your shoulder strength, the muscles around the shoulders, as well as the scapular musculature with a little bit more range of motion that you're moving through, right? Anytime you go further, increase more depth, you're asking more of your tissues in load and capacity. And then finally, you can move into even a bigger challenge with more body weight put on there with wall push-ups, wall climbs, and certainly bigger range of motion that you can do for that. That's a big, big challenge. Obviously, start with the first 3, get stronger in that. It really should feel easy before you move on to the next one, such as a wall climb or wall push-ups, something of that sort. Now, let's move on to a few other of our favorite strength overhead strategies.
Now we're going to talk about actually taking a weight and holding it up over your head. We'll get to the movement of actually pressing up later, but for now we're going to talk about shoulder stability and how that can play a role in shoulder strength. I like to think of a strong shoulder as a stable shoulder. It's hard to press overhead when we don't have that inherent stability in that shoulder complex like Gene was talking about earlier. So a great way to work on shoulder stability and shoulder strength at the same time is an overhead carry. You can take a plethora of different things, a dumbbell, a kettlebell, a barbell, hold them, a PS5. Look at that, I actually have one right here. You can take a PS5, hold it up over your head, and hold there. You could march in place, you could walk. I really like overhead carries in that sense because now we're adding movement to it, which further requires demand on the shoulder for that stability and strength. So what can you carry overhead to work on strength and stability? Surprisingly, a good place to start is a barbell. And the reason for that is it has 2 points of contact over your head, requires less stability for that carry because you get 2 hands to work on the same external load. It looks scary. The barbell seems like it'd be heavier. It's a bigger movement or a bigger piece of equipment, but it requires a little bit less stability than, say, a dumbbell. So I would progress that by taking a heavy dumbbell, holding it overhead. Now you're relying on just that one shoulder for the stability and strength to be able to carry the piece of equipment. Progressing that even further is a kettlebell carry. Kettlebells are an interesting shape. All of the weight is in the bell part. So if you take that bell, flip it upside down, it's really challenging to hold up overhead. You can do that with your shoulder at a 90-degree angle, or for extra stability in that overhead position, you can go all the way up overhead, again with the kettlebell upside down. So if we look at overhead carrying or holds in a range from easy to most challenging, we can think of it as kind of a spectrum. You can stand there in place holding a dumbbell, kettlebell, barbell overhead here or here, but as soon as we add movement to that, it becomes a little more challenging. So now, once holding it overhead for 30 to 60 seconds feels easy to you, now you can try walking with that weight up over your head, or progress it even further with marching. Now you're adding a single leg stance into that, which will challenge not only the shoulder complex, but now the hips, the midline stability, everything down the chain. So now we're going to put a lot of the pieces together and talk about actually lifting and pressing weights up over your head.
All right, last but not least, we've got probably the most obvious of the 3 strategies to improve overhead strength is a strict overhead press. There's a couple different ways you can do this. And by different ways, I mean different pieces of equipment you could use, right? So you could grab a plate, right, and press over your head with both arms. You can grab a dumbbell, you can grab a barbell, you can grab literally anything that has weight to it. I'll include kettlebell since I named everything else. And you are purely just strictly pressing over your head, right? So this requires full shoulder flexion, shoulder mobility, right? So if you don't have that, that's going to be a little bit harder, but not to worry, I have a plan for you. Landmine press also I would file under like a strict overhead press. Now it's not purely overhead, but it does involve a lot of the same muscle groups and can help you progress in achieving the mobility required to do an overhead strict press, as well as the strength, right? So landmine anything is when one end of the barbell is on the ground and the other end you are working with. So a landmine press, you have one end of the barbell on the ground, the other is in your hand, and you kind of spread your feet out into a nice base of support, and then you're pressing over your head, but you kind of have to angle your body so that it does actually mimic a overhead press and not like a standing chest press. Those are the main like strict overhead presses. The things you want to be mindful of are making sure that the rest of your body is in line. So while it's the most obvious of the three strategies in improving overhead strength, it's probably the one that you have to pay the most attention to in terms of the rest of your body. So what I mean by that is making sure that your rib cage is nicely stacked over top of your pelvis and that the weight that you're moving stays in line with that, right? So you don't want that rib cage flared or your pelvis kind of tilting at all. Having a nice stacked position, having tension across the board here, and making sure that the weight travels within the line of the stability that you're creating within your body. So if you found these helpful, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the button right here. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. So the three strategies in terms of improving overhead strength, I know that was kind of a lot, but we want to make sure that you were able to kind of progress, regress with where you are at in your fitness journey.